Hi, my name is Steven and welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how change is inevitable. So the only constant in life is change, and the inevitable situation is we either choose to accept it or we struggle against it. And what really brings this home is that currently right now we are in a perpetual state of change. Everything going around us is changing. People are changing, lives are changing, the world is changing at an ever-growing rate. And now the people who benefit the most are the people who change with the times. And I find out that people who resist against change are the ones who struggle with it in the future. So in the last 10 years, my environment, my friends, my career, we're all in a state of constant flux. And adapting to those situations have given me a belief that change is good, and I must accept change as it occurs because it's ultimately in the best interest of my life. So in this video, I'm going to talk about 3 things: why change is inevitable, why change makes you uncomfortable, and tips on how to deal with changes with examples from my life. And let's go! So let's talk about why change is inevitable. So first of all, the world is not dormant. It's always in a state of flux. So as the world advances in knowledge, tech, and culture, things are inevitably going to change around you. This is especially true with technology, as it makes the world a smaller place. Those who you wouldn't otherwise meet or talk to in person, now you can see all their activities through social media. So in general, society has a way of adapting and changing with the influx of more ideas, more culture, more ways of looking at old things. And also, viruses and pandemics might change the world as well. And the other reason why change is inevitable is because you change. Maybe you notice that as you grow older, you start to change, and the things that you've done when you were a little kid aren't as appealing to you when you're older. This can be either through a combination of physical or mental limitations, or you just grow out of it, or you find something different or new to experience. And also, people go in and out of your lives, and that affects who you are. Relationships grow closer, and then some relationships die out. And also, a big key here is that you are your successes and failures in life. Now, this is something that I didn't really understand, but as you go through life, your successes and failures determine who you become. It's like a little test. Every time you encounter a success or failure, what do you learn from it? And how does that change you as a person? For example, if you go through a big failure, how do you recover from it? Do you redouble your efforts, or do you give up and try something else? That over many, many years and over a long period of time ultimately shapes who you become. If you redouble your efforts and gain courage, then you are more confident in doing the next big thing, and then the next big thing after that. But if you take the failure to heart and you don't learn anything from it, then it might be easier for you to fail at other things in the future and perpetuate that cycle. It's certainly not an inevitability, but successes and failures really help you to shape who you are as a person. It's definitely not a black and white thing, and there's a lot of gray areas. How you struggle to adversity shapes and changes who you are. I feel like that is an underrated aspect of why people are the way they are. So now let's break down why is it so uncomfortable to change. So one of the reasons is you don't want to actively learn something new or something different. This is something that you know you can do and that you know you could change about yourself if you wanted to. This is something that with the right push or with the right mindset, you might be able to accomplish. But it's something that you've put off because it's too difficult to do, or it's something new and requires a lot of time. So for example, my parents, who are boomers, and they struggle with learning tech. Even though they've had the same amount of time with technology, computers, cell phones, it was just too difficult for them at the time. Now they're a little better at it, but still not as adept at it as I am. So some of the consequences of this is you don't want to look bad trying something new. You don't want to be embarrassed, or you don't want to be in situations where you're asking for help and that hurts your pride. And then it could also mean that you're scared of the consequences if you fail. If you put it out there, or if you try something really hard and you fail and you fall flat on your face, and that could put you in a mindset where you are resistant to change and you don't want to change because it's not something that you're actively comfortable with. And so the second reason why it's so uncomfortable to change is if that change is forced upon you. So the second part is when a change comes to you suddenly and you don't know how to adapt to it, or you don't have the tools to deal with it. So this can be like a quick example of a sudden death or a raging pandemic, or something that comes out of the ordinary that you're just not equipped to handle. Because the other reason you know the change and you're resistant against it, this is you don't know the change and you don't know what's going to happen. So this change, when it comes out of the blue or comes suddenly, this is fear of the unknown. You don't know what you don't know, and that scares the heck out of you. Why do you want to adapt to a situation that you know nothing of? And you don't know how to adapt to it because nobody else around you is also doing it. So here are some tips on how I deal with change. So number one, listen to what's happening. So ask yourself what's happening and be as rational as possible. This is really about listening and observing to the world around you and the situation that's going on. The active skill of listening and just taking in what's going on can help you dispel a lot of issues surrounding with change that's going on. It might not be you that's changing, it might be the world that's changing, but being an active listener can help you understand or at least gain more knowledge about what's going on, just to take in that information and kind of reflect on it. For example, for me, this was the pandemic. When the pandemic started, it was a lot of information, a lot of fear, uncertainty, anxiety that coursed through me. I knew things were going to change in a large way, and I had to be patient. I had to listen, and I had to rationalize everything that was going on. Certainly, my emotions came up and bubbled, but I let those emotions churn through, and I worked through those emotions. But I also kept in the back of my mind my ability to just be and listen to what's going on. And that helped me tremendously to not freak out every time there was some grim statistic. So number two, ask what's the worst that can happen. Once you see the changes coming, either unexpectedly or expectedly, ask yourself, what is the worst that can happen to me, either physically or mentally? This gives you the exercise of how the change might impact you. By going through this exercise, you might find out that it might not hurt you in a way that you thought it might. And in most cases, the answer is change might result in a mild discomfort. This is really rooted in our fight or flight response. As humans, as primates, we have an ability to judge things quickly, and we really fall into the category of one or two things. We either fight it or we run away from it. And in the modern age, where that distinction is really hard to tell, we can still try to identify if it will hurt us. And if the case is yes, then we do things to try to mitigate us. In most cases, the change isn't really going to result in us being physically hurt. And then recognize if that can be overcome with courage. Because if it won't hurt you physically or mentally, and if it will just give you a mild discomfort, then it's possible to muster up some courage and then overcome that. For example, for me, I moved from Los Angeles to San Francisco. This was the first time I was moving by myself to a city that I had no friends in. I had to ask myself, what was the worst thing that could possibly happen to me? And then the worst thing wasn't really that bad. It was more the fear of loneliness or the fear of not knowing what to do. And it was the fear of not having someone to help me. But that really wasn't the worst case outcome. And I realized that I was so far away from the worst case that it really shouldn't affect me. And then in the end, I was able to find coworkers to help me through that first year. So number three, put it out there and find people to talk about this. So really this boils down to finding people to help you through change or going through a difficult time. These people or person will often give you the boost that you need to go through a period of change or something very difficult. I found that really acquaintances work best in this scenario. These people who you don't know really well don't really have any incentive to put you down or give you negative comments about it, and usually will give you positivity in supporting your goals. They can't tell you why you can't change because they don't really know you well enough. Whereas the people that know you very well might be resistant to you changing. So for my personal history, when I moved from San Francisco to Seattle, I joined an improv group and talked to people there about my experiences in moving to a different state. And many of the people in improv were from out of state, and they were doing the same things I was doing by joining a group and talking to people about their experiences. I was really able to connect with these people because we had a shared experience of moving to Washington. And because we didn't really know each other, we were all pushing each other to be more social and open. Number four, giving yourself patience. Doing something new and going through something difficult for the first time is very challenging. You don't need to rush it. Take time off or give yourself breaks so you don't end up burning yourself out or quitting. The key is to slowly take yourself out of that uncomfortable zone. And if you want more information on how to get out of your uncomfortable zone, one of my previous videos talks about what is your risk level. And in that video, I talk about how you can get out of your comfort zone in a manageable and planned way. I'll link to that video in the description below. So for my personal example, I wanted to go out and do things during the pandemic. So I wanted to go see my friends as much as I can during the pandemic. Socially distanced, of course. Most of my friends weren't comfortable enough to see me in person. And I really had to be patient because we were all going through a stressful and challenging situation. Really, there was no need for me to rush it. I had to just be patient and wait until my friends were comfortable in meeting outside. And number five, ignore the haters. When you start to change, either willingly or unwillingly, there will always be people who want you to stay exactly the same. And eventually they're going to start criticizing you for acting differently. From my personal experience, I know that friends are initially very happy that you're trying something new or that you're changing to something different. So at first they might be okay with it, but then as time goes on and your personality changes a little bit to accommodate this new thing, they start to recognize it and then they actively voice their displeasure about it, or they outright start criticizing it. This really stems from them not wanting a change in their lives because they see it as something different and they're uncomfortable with how you're changing. Because even though you might be in the mindset or you might want to change something about yourself, your friends or someone else might not be okay with you changing because it changes the dynamic of their relationship with you and they might be uncomfortable with change as well. Just know that if the relationship is strong enough, you'll keep them as a friend. And if they don't, the relationship might not be as good as you thought it was. So changing, willingly or unwillingly, is about growing as a person. You change because you are doing something different for the first time. If there are going to be people that are going to hate on you, then really it's up to you to ignore those people. Because you have to be strong in your convictions to say that, hey, you're doing the right thing. And really you have to understand where the people that are hating on you comes from. So for example, moving to Seattle overall was different. My friends and family did not want me to go to another state. They thought that San Francisco was far enough. My old friends and family wanted me to be closer to them because of obvious reasons, so that they would see me more often. But even though moving to Seattle was a good opportunity for me personally, a lot of people that criticized my move and didn't want me to move, they were coming from a place where they didn't want to lose me as a friend. They knew that if I moved to a different state, it'd be harder for them to see me. It was more of self-preservation on their part. So really I had to listen to those criticisms of my friends and family and really identify where they were coming from and whether or not it applies. In the end, I realized I had to move, and I had to make that commitment to come back and visit them as often as I could. So as you can see, going through changes, whether you want to or not, can be very, very difficult. If you have a purpose for the change and people who support you, it can be really easy. All you need is really patience. But if the change is sudden and unwarranted, it might take you a really, really long time to accept that things have occurred. And it might take you a long time for you to accept and adjust to the new reality. Either way, it's a simple fact of life that nothing's going to stay the same forever. If you find yourself adjusting and adapting to a situation the first time, it gets easier and easier the subsequent times you do it. Or at the very least, you'll have more experience the next time you're dealing with a new or difficult situation. Just know that your mind sometimes has a resistance against doing something new or changing it up. And it'll take some time for you to mentally adjust and adapt to the new situations. So the tips that I suggested have really helped me through the last decade or so of constant changes. I was able to push through my resistances and doubts whenever something tough would occur. And these tips have really put me in a mindset of expecting the unexpected. So I really hope this video has helped you. Please leave a comment down below on how you deal with change and if those tips that I suggested have helped you. So again, thank you for watching. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. And as always, I'll see you next time.